The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
You're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, episode 51.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Hey everybody, I'm Father Andrew Kinstetter, aka Father Fett, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away, including the deeper themes and meanings. And today we're discussing Star Wars Rebels Season 3, Episode 20, Twin Suns. And joining me on the paddle today are, first of all, Angela Cialana. Hey, Angela.
The holocron sent me here.
Are you sure it was the holocron? Second up this evening, we have Thomas Sanjurjo.
It's good to be here. I was wondering if I should get down my Sith holocron again, just have that sitting ominously in the background, right?
Right. And third this evening is Mike Creevy.
I can't resist. Hello there. There it is. Another spoiler.
Perfect episode for that. So we are talking Rebels Season 3, Episode 20, Twin Suns, which is the final confrontation between Obi-Wan and Maul. As usual, I will throw out to you guys first. What was your initial impressions, or if you remember your initial impressions, or your re-initial impressions of this particular episode?
I've only watched this episode like 20 times. Every time somebody talks about Maul and his arc, I have to go back and watch this episode to kind of, remind myself of the end of his arc, because it really is such a well-scripted moment. It very deep. Like, even the first time you see it, you still, the first time it came out, we really didn't know that much about Maul. Like, he was still not as central a figure as he has become since then. So it's, the more you learn about him, the more you want to go back and rewatch this scene.
Yeah. For me, watching it, like probably the 20th or 30th time, I would say this time I got Christ in the Desert vibes for sure. A lot of the theme of temptation and distraction. So that was kind of neat.
Well, and I have not seen it quite that many times, but it's funny. And we'll see this throughout. This has been a theme that's been coming up as I'm kind of doing a lot of read throughs some of the Star Wars novels lately. Whenever events are taking place in that sort of interim period between the fall of the Republic and the events of the original trilogy, and it's like I never really gave it much thought. All the different sort of ways you can explore the frustration surrounding Obi-Wan being out of the picture, and being alive, and how easy it would be. Like, you have all these different characters across all these different, books. And then in this case, too, they bring it up with, Hera at one point talking to Ezra about, like, Obi-Wan, like, if he were around, wouldn't he be with us? Like, so just the whole, just the reality of his time on Tatooine for all these years, is just something that you can explore so much. And of course, I'm glad they're doing that in a show. So, so that was, I couldn't help but think of ways to ostensibly to watch that when it comes out, knowing that it's taking place probably a good amount of time before this particular episode in the timeline, because I think they said that show's going to kick off like 8 years after episode 3 or something, and this is what, like 19 or 18, right, something like that,
more or less,
or at least 15 or 16 or something. So just even though that's not a long part of the episode, the whole build up to like this mystery, of of Obi-Wan out there somewhere, I really liked it a lot. It was neat.
Yeah. Angela, I appreciated your comment about Christ in the desert and sort of thing, because Obi-Wan totally has the almost the Saint Anthony of the desert sort of vibe too, the hermit, and
right.
Like he could very well be an instrumental part of the rebellion, but he chooses to separate himself from the world, of course, to protect Luke. But that's what those who are cloistered and hermits do too, is they just they remove themselves from the world in order to dedicate themselves to that time in prayer. I watched the Rebels Recon for this, and found that incredibly enlightening. In fact, because I had some issues with this episode, and that actually kind of helped tie some things together for me. But they had mentioned in Rebels Recon that they suspected that Obi-Wan spent the majority of his time meditating. So that kind of fits that too, of course. And we know that Qui-Gon is probably teaching him how to become one with the Force as well during that time. So we might get to see some of that in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. But
yay! Here's hoping.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they'll bring some Qui-Gon back.
Because up till now, I believe all they've officially given us is Yoda, like as a passing, oh yeah, hey, Obi-Wan, by the way, teach you to commune with him, I will.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Oh, okay. And then it's just, all right.
And we know that it happens because,
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So my impressions of this episode was, first of all, I was sort of just frustrated with Ezra. Like, how many times are you going to fall for Maul's tricks? And he, continues to fall with that. But seeing Obi-Wan and Maul is of course really the kind of the whole point of the episode. Ezra's just sort of the conduit to get to that point. And my initial beef with this episode, and I think a lot of people shared this, was how quick the actual battle was between Obi-Wan and Maul.
That's my favorite part. That's my favorite part
too
of the whole thing. It's so measured.
Yeah,
and precise, and he had the whole battle planned out before it even started, and that to me was like, that was the impactful thing. Like, Obi-Wan has grown so much from the first fight with Maul, and Maul has changed, but he hasn't grown, and that's you see that in that final fight.
I guess to talk about that, because that's not to jump ahead, but That was exactly well, yeah. I mean, that was exactly what Rebels Recon kind of helped me to piece together, because the initial, the first time watching it, it was like I had to like rewind it and be like, wait, that was it. But Rebels Recon does make the same sort of points, is that you almost in the lead up before the initial swing from Maul and Kenobi are like, playing through the battle in their mind already, because they know. They know each other so well, and their fighting style. But also what Rebels Recon pointed out, which I absolutely loved, was that the move that Maul attempts to do on Kenobi is the move that killed Qui-Gon. And Kenobi doesn't fall for that, but actually that's where he is able to strike Maul down, which I thought was a really, really cool thing. We can get more into that later, but that was.
Well, I've still got a lot of stuff to say about Ezra too.
Perfect. We'll get to that.
So see you guys next time.
That's right. On Secrets of Star Wars episode 52.
That's so mean.
No, we've still got to talk through the whole episode. So stick with us, listeners. And we'll get there. So. The episode does start off with the vast landscapes of Tatooine, which Filoni points out that he wanted to show these incredibly vast landscapes of Tatooine. In fact, I think this is the first time Tatooine has showed up in Rebels as well, which is pretty cool. But we hear Maul sort of just kind of mumbling to himself, and that he can feel the presence of Kenobi in his mind's eye, and but he doesn't know where he is. And so we have these vast scenes from the desert of Tatooine. And Filoni pointed out that he did this in order to show that even though Maul narrowed down the planet on which Kenobi was, how vastly difficult it was to pinpoint his location on the planet. So those opening scenes just give this vast, immense sense of the planet, and Maul can't actually find where Kenobi is. So Maul comes up with a plan to draw Kenobi out. And so all we see before the opening Rebels logo is that he opens his hand, revealing the holocron that he had from Malachor. And then after the opening logo, we jump to Chopper Base, and Ezra and Zeb are sleeping, and Ezra is woken by the voice of Kenobi, which was a really, really cool thing because they were able to have James Arnold Taylor play that particular part, the transmission from Kenobi, and then Stephen Stanton actually does the voice of more of the Alec Guinness portrayal of Kenobi later on in the episode. So he hears this the voice of Kenobi, and finally gets out of bed to go check it out, and realizes that it's a repeating transmission from Kenobi's warning to the Jedi across the galaxy that he sent at the end of Revenge of the Sith.
I think as I was watching this kind of more analytically this time, the fact that Kenobi, the clip that is used where Kenobi says this is a warning for any surviving Jedi, it was sort of like, I don't know, maybe foreshadowing to like a tiny bit, because in a way, this was almost like Ezra should have known better, like he's like he and Kanan are sort of the surviving Jedi, like in this kind of world that we know in Rebels, and besides Ahsoka, but she's not a Jedi. And so I just thought like, wow, that's kind of cool that it's almost, I mean, we know what it's from, but if you sort of put that in context of Ezra looking at this thing, it should be a warning for him,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that it's not actually a transmission from Obi-Wan himself, but that it's just a recording from a long time ago. Mm-hmm. I was pretty impressed by the way it plays, because it plays almost like it's a burnout recording, like it's got that kind of scratchiness to it and the flickering, and that just lends to that, well, this is just something that's been summoned up to trick the gullible, basically. And that's, so it should have been a warning. And it's interesting that's not something that he's seen before. I'm intrigued about that too. Like, that's not something that he's been exposed to before, but knowing Kanan, that makes sense too. Like, he wouldn't want to relive any of that. So
yeah. Well, and then at the end of that kind of broken up transmission, Ezra does hear Maul's voice saying Kenobi's name. And this is where I kept, like, even in my notes over and over again, I just kind of wrote, like, come on, Ezra. Like, he should have recognized it as a warning or, a trick. And yet, I mean, he definitely knows that Maul is back and tells Kanan who walks in, but Ezra's still a bit young and brash, and decides ultimately he decides to go off to investigate. But that's here in just a little bit.
I think Ezra also has a unique connection to Maul, or maybe the other way around, because Maul, the more you learn about him and the more you learn about his position, he's like a wild animal that's been caged by so many different things and keeps escaping and keeps surviving and keeps, like, kind of scrapping himself back together just to live. That Kanan or Ezra's connection to animals, the way that he can empathize with animals so much, it's almost like Maul just attracts that part of him, because there's something just base and animalistic about the way Maul does things, and he's drawn to that, whether it's to try and save it or to try and connect with it or to try and destroy it because he knows that it's injured and damaged. I don't know, but I think that's something that's innate inside of Ezra that draws him to Maul in a way that none of the others want to be anywhere near him.
I think on a more basic level, the two of them they worked together to enter that Sith temple. So they both used dark side powers together as a pair. in order to do that. So I think that must have, I mean, I remember when I first watched this episode, and I was a little bit baffled, why Ezra would continue to go down this path with Maul. But I think that was sort of my my headcanon that I kind of made up, that they must be so tied because of that teamwork that they had to do together.
Yeah, there was definitely we haven't talked about those episodes yet, but there's episodes in this season where they work together to combine, I think, the Sith and the Jedi holocron, or to gain knowledge. Ezra wants to gain knowledge on how to destroy the Sith, and there's some previous episodes where they have a more than just kind of a friendly connection, but they have a force connection. So definitely, I think all of those are coming at play and pulling at Ezra in a way that Kanan has no connection to.
Well, I think too, it's you see the theme of and Filoni was so good on this a little while ago, but like this recurring theme of fatherhood in so many different ways it plays out all across this universe, and the empathy kind of, I think, between orphans or between those who have faced some sort of traumatic past, and that's by no means unique to these two in a sense, but like you look at like Maul's story, and I speaking of headcanon, I just finished I finally got around to James Luceno's Darth Plagueis book, which of course is not canon, but it's like so close to the Disney era and everything, and Luceno's writing other books that are, what I mean? So I like to pretend it's canon, basically. And
I think as long as it doesn't contradict anything, you can totally call it canon.
Yeah, and I'm a little hazy. I haven't read all the Darth Maul, like the comics and all that kind of stuff, but I know they touch on, in I think in Clone Wars and in Rebels, I want to say, or more so in Clone Wars, but he's got a pretty messed up childhood, if nothing else, anyway you look at it. But the way it's just, I don't know, the way I kind of see their relationship kind of playing out, where it's like Ezra kind of, I feel like he senses that there's something similar, they both have this sort of loss, or some experience of that, but it's such a great, I think it's a great little life lesson, because it's like, for us Christians too, like I'm supposed to empathize, I'm reminded of Jesus's thing about, like be as innocent as doves, but also as cunning as serpents. You know what I mean? Like you don't just automatically trust though someone who's been through a lot because maybe they want to do something bad to you, and I really get even though they're not together maybe in a whole lot of episodes, I always got watching them kind of together, the whole Maul arc with Ezra. I mean, he really could become his apprentice. Like he really, like he could do it. Like he could go down that path, and they have him dance on that path, I think, just the right amount. And it's I feel like it's believable.
Yeah, Maul's sort of got the fun uncle sort of vibe.
Yes.
Yeah. And Kanan's the dad. Yeah.
The dangerous fun uncle.
Yeah.
I mean, really good at magic tricks.
And they do kind of at least sort of point that out, even when Ezra and when Maul shows up and Ezra's there and Ezra's sent off, Maul looks at Ezra going away and says, "See you soon, apprentice," because he's still kind of trying to have that kind of a relationship. But Kenobi, Filoni pointed out that actually, or not Filoni, but one of them in the Rebels Recall pointed out that some of his mannerisms towards Ezra are some of the same things that Obi-Wan has towards Luke in that kind of mentor kind of role, even in that brief scene. So these themes, continue to kind of pop up all over the place for sure.
I should, by the way, warn everyone listening that there's a good chance I'm going to make like 3 or 4 connections to like, I think Harry Potter's coming up, Lord of the Rings, and like 2 others, just to be advised, even the other Star series that we don't usually mention. But I almost, the Harry Potter one was this, because and maybe we've mentioned this before, but I do get this like is Ezra like the Neville Longbottom of, like Star Wars, like, or then we had these questions about the child too from Mandalorian, who's I don't know, a couple of years old at this point, what, 30 or 40, I don't know, because he ages so differently. But yeah, I wonder like how far we're gonna go like as the story kind of expands with this, like just to get a better idea of like what's like how's that work? You know what I mean? Because like you watch the original trilogy, and that's always, I wouldn't say frustrating, but kind of for me, because it's like, and I know other people brought this up too, like Yoda very clearly is telling Luke like the last of the Jedi you are. And it's like, oh, except like these 10 or 15 other people that are out there in the universe who might pull through at the last minute. Like it just makes you wonder, like, how's that work? You know,
that's part of why Disney had to reset the canon, because there were so many Jedi who survived Order 66. And
Vader was really sloppy as it turns out.
But they do allude to that even in this episode. As Maul dies, he asks if it's the chosen one that Kenobi is protecting, and you know, Kenobi says yes. I mean, but okay, the chosen one was technically Anakin, but Kenobi's referring to Luke, who is
Luke,
right. But you know, watching the original trilogy, Luke is the hero. He is the one who ultimately, you know, at least in the trilogy,
they also have that moment in the original trilogy where Yoda and Ben sit down, and Yoda says, there is the sister.
Yeah.
You know? There is
Are we really having a who is the chosen one discussion right now? How long is this podcast going to be?
Yeah, because that's what we didn't realize till now is when Yoda says no, there was another, you know, Ezra, Baby Yoda. You can go down the list. Rey in 3 years.
Yeah.
Like, there are many others. Okay.
On a completely random side note, I just saw that scene where Ben and Yoda have that discussion because at our local movie theater they are playing The Empire Strikes Back.
Oh yeah, how'd that go?
$5. So it was amazing.
Oh, I bet.
Like to see one of the original trilogy in theaters when I never have before, totally worth every cent that I spent. I spent more money on popcorn, but totally worth it. So,
well, that's, how old are you guys? Were, because I think Thomas, you're a little older than me, but I was, I think 13 or so when the special editions came out. You know, so that was like, you know, going to the theater and seeing it. But I mean, that was the only time I did that. And it was just like so awesome. I know some people are like opening drive-ins and stuff now because of like the pandemic and stuff. So I was listening to some folks who got to go see it. Or I don't know if it was, I think they saw Rise of Skywalker, but you know, seeing Star Wars in a drive-in must be cool. So I've never done that.
Better to do that in the summertime when you can like sit in the back of a pickup truck. And back to Star Wars Rebels though, since we've kind of traversed the unknown regions in our tangents.
We're out into Chiss space now. So
oh no.
Speaking of that, we're going to learn more about that come September with the new Thrawn book, which will be great. Anyways, back to family themes, because that's kind of the core of this show. The next morning after Ezra is woken up by the holocron, they have a family meeting about this, and trying to figure out what this means, and Kanan isn't sure what the message means, and Ezra is pretty sure it means that Kenobi could be alive and in danger. And we had a subtle nod here to because Rex says that he'd love for General Kenobi to be alive, but that Senator Organa confirmed his death, which was a cool nod back to episode 3. I mean, Senator Organa knows that Kenobi survived, so we know that he's covering for him. And Ezra is convinced that it could be a sign that he's alive, and everybody keeps pointing out how unlikely it is to be real and valid. And Hera points out that it could be a broken recording, and Kanan points out that Maul has manipulated Ezra in the past, and this could be a trick. And Ezra is adamant that he wants to go to Tatooine and check it out. And then Hera pulls him aside and kind of has this mom-son sort of talk, and tells him, how important it is for Ezra to be there with them because they're preparing for the attack on Lothal, which happens in the episode immediately following this, is the finale of season 3. And Ezra, still is thinking that if Kenobi's alive, he'd be a great help. And this is the part that you mentioned, Mike, that Hera makes the point that if Kenobi was alive, why would he be hiding on some backwater world instead of helping the rebellion? she tells Ezra that she needs him here because there's too much at stake.
It's great wisdom from our show friend Vanessa Marshall. So
that's right.
And isn't that kind of a meme too? That conversation, like you can just see Hera like saying that, you know, he wouldn't be on some backwater planet or whatever. And then it's like, meanwhile, back at the ranch, and you see like Obi-Wan like tending a fire or something, like
cleaning up after the dewback, or you know, there's something.
That's what was going on in my mind.
He just looks up for a moment, realizing someone's talking about him distance away.
His ears are burning.
Right?
He's frustrated. He's like, Anakin just had to come from this planet.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
It's not exactly like,
miserable.
You know, the sandy beaches of Hawaii, sort of.
Right, well, yeah, like God forbid the chosen one be from Naboo. Like, yeah, we didn't send him back to be with his mother's family. No, we had to send...
Yeah, and 2 sons. Okay, well, we got to get there first, and Ezra has to get to Tatooine first. And in order to get to Tatooine, Ezra steals an A-Wing.
Lieutenant, you're not authorized to do that.
Right. And he's not even really trying to stop him.
Yeah, right? He's like climbing up the ladder. You can't.
And Ezra's
I like how
like,
even fakes like, I can't hear you. Oh, well.
It's like, I think I had that guy in my unit back in the Army days. Like, you know, like, no, stop. Like, okay.
I think my favorite part of the whole thing, though, is somehow in all of that, Chopper snuck on the A-Wing.
Yes.
Like, how does a droid sneak onto an A-Wing behind you?
It is Chopper.
My first watch through, I didn't even notice. They have a scene where you can see Chopper, and he runs or disappears behind one of the other ships. It did not at all click in my mind that meant he was going to go stow away on the A-Wing, but he does. Ezra hops in this A-Wing, takes off, says hopes that Hera can forgive him for that. And they get to Tatooine, and Chopper surprises Ezra before he descends onto the planet. And then Ezra isn't exactly sure where to go, so he grabs the holocrons that he has in his hands, and sort of they sort of act like a compass. And he has Chopper kind of take him down onto the planet, and the holocrons are glowing blue and are sort of directionally showing him where to go, which of course is all just completely a ploy from Maul, but it gets Ezra to follow it. And so they get to a point kind of in this cavern, or this canyon, and they set down, and Ezra continues to follow. He gets out of the A-Wing and continues to follow the holocrons until it leads him to Maul's Sith holocron. And that's when Ezra realizes it's a trap.
The trap.
Yeah. We need Admiral Akbar to pop up.
Yeah, just random scenes of Akbar. It's a trap.
It's a trap.
So but he's attacked by Tusken Raiders, which I don't know if that was part of Maul's plan or not, but that's kind of what happens. And Ezra and Chopper kind of fight off the Tusken Raiders on the ground, and they manage to completely destroy the A-Wing, which I thought was
what are they shooting out of those things?
Yeah.
It's insane. Like, I know they took out pod racers in episode 1, but an A-Wing's like, that's a starship, man.
Yeah. Well, I guess this is quite a bit of time later from pod racing, so maybe they stole some better equipment. Maul takes out the Tusken Raiders that are kind of on the ridge, and so he's obviously there watching Ezra, and Ezra just kind of assumes that the explosion of the A-Wing is what scared him off, but of course it was Maul who took out the ones on the ridge. And they have no choice. Ezra and Chopper have to go forward, so they head off into the sand. I put in my notes, I wasn't sure, maybe this is the Dune Sea. This is in the similar geography of where Luke is. So anyway, so he heads out. They head off into the Dune Sea. Chopper was a good droid here. He initially wanted what?
I said poor Chopper.
Yeah. Well, he wants to go along the ridge because he's gonna get less sand in his joints and have less issues. And Ezra has a vision of Maul off into the sand and wants to go into the sand and is going to go with or without Chopper. And he tells Chopper that Chopper can go along the ridge and find a settlement and contact home base if he wants. And Chopper starts to go that way, and then just like a kid, grumbles and then goes and follows Ezra.
That deep sigh, though, that like a droid sigh, right? Like just expels something. I don't know what it is, but you just, the dejected sigh from the droid as he turns around to go in the sand. That was awesome.
He is one of the best sort of droids that has human emotion, and you can just you don't need to know what he says. You can just tell.
You can tell. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, all the droids in Star Wars, I think they do a really good job with the human emotional side of things. So they head out into the Dune Sea or into the sand, and they hit the worst weather possible. They get caught in a sandstorm, and
in the words of little Anakin, sandstorms are very, very dangerous. Okay, gotcha.
This must have been just a smaller one because they don't really get beat up too bad. And but Ezra, in the midst of this, does see a vision of Maul, and hears Maul. I mean, ultimately, kind of talking about his plan to draw Kenobi out, because he's talking about. He says, "Your pain, your sorrow, it calls to him." And so the assumption is that Ezra's own pain and sorrow is what's calling out to Kenobi to draw him out. And they keep going forward, and they manage to get out of the sandstorm, and the twin suns are beating down on them. Poor Chopper loses power and shuts down. And then Ezra laments that everything is his fault and that he should have just stayed home. Ezra again hears Maul, and he again hears more of kind of that drawing of Kenobi. And he seems to be really sort of prompting Ezra to wallow in his own misery.
Mm-hmm.
He's saying that you failed your friends and you will die, and kind of provoking him and leading him down that path of despair, which he thinks is going to draw Kenobi out. Ultimately, it probably does to some degree. And finally, Ezra leaps up and attacks empty air, thinking that he sees Maul in a vision, and ultimately Maul's not there, and he falls, and he passes out from the heat as someone approaches. I totally got Lion King vibes here.
Just a step in the sand,
like Simba running off into the desert and collapsing. So not necessarily.
It's been a while since I've seen a Lion King.
Obi-Wan singing Hakuna Matata.
It's odd because I got Prince of Egypt Val Kilmer Moses stuck in the sandstorm, and then ending up at the camel watering hole for some reason.
How many movie references are we going to make with this one?
A lot more than we probably should.
Well, I think it's a testament to the fact that you can see that Filoni and all of the crew knew that this was a big moment. They knew that what they were about to do was big, and it's a testament to the fact that they knew it was big, and they knew they were going to make it big, and they had all of the rest of the story to tell about Maul and about Obi-Wan to flesh these characters out in a way that was much bigger than what we'd even seen so far. Because these episodes came out in 2017, so
right.
There was still some of the Clone Wars was missing. There was still some information missing about Maul and how important he was. So it's a good temperature gauge for where they were going with the story.
Well, and this was correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was about a year before Solo. So you didn't have the in the wake of this, you have the kind of call back to him cinematically and stuff too. So they really have planted him so well, throughout over these years, and really fleshed this character out.
Yeah, and it speaks to the story as a whole that this episode didn't have a whole lot of explanatory narrative.
Right.
You just it assumes that you know exactly who Maul is, you know who Kenobi is, you know Tatooine, and you know what's going on. And you have the vast narrative of the other episodes and the movies and the books to fill that in, which is, and yeah, there's a lot there.
But honestly, even if you don't know the backstory, there are so many classic motifs in this episode. And just how the characters are built, or how they were built by George Lucas. Maul looking the way that he does, speaking the way that he does. Obviously, Obi-Wan looking and speaking as he does, and we see that in a little bit in the dialogue as well. But you really don't need to know the backstory. If you do, as with all Star Wars, it enriches it. But you can simply just enjoy, the good versus evil plot here, and that would be plenty.
And the texture kind of it, and Angela, it was so funny. I was just thinking the same thing, and what hit me was like the kind of Wild Western, almost like thing. Like he catches up with him in the desert at the campfire. It's just
black hat, white hat.
Yeah. And they know each other, goes way back. Like that's kind of enough.
The only thing that you would be confused about if you only saw the movies was how did Maul survive? But I think especially with Solo and everything, there's enough out there that people do realize that Maul survived that fall in episode 1.
And he's no longer, I can't help myself, he's no longer half the man he used to be. It's still I still feel bad for the guy. Come on, that was rough. That was a bad day.
He does pretty well though with losing his legs. But
he does. And if there's one thing Star Wars tells us, it's if you want to take out an adversary, don't throw them down a pit.
Right?
Like it almost never works.
Anyways, back at the fire.
Oh, that's going to come up again because I have a comment. We get done with the duel. I have a comment about it too.
So yeah, Kenobi steps in and saves Chopper and Ezra, and it's nighttime, and they're by the campfire. Chopper's hooked up to a portable power station, and Kenobi is there and is talking to Ezra and tells him that he will help him get on his way once he has his strength. And Ezra tells Kenobi that he's come to warn him about Maul. But of course, Kenobi already knows about Maul because Kenobi hasn't lived that long and gained that much experience and he has gained that much experience to know when someone's trailing him and trying to find him. And Ezra is all about being able to fight Maul with Kenobi, and Kenobi has this line. He says, "I had no intention of fighting him, although that seems inevitable now." And so we know that there's a fight coming at some point. And then we have some references to some of the more the Jedi kind of fate kind of realm. Ezra is telling Kenobi that the holocrons told him, and this would have been in one of the previous episodes again that we haven't reviewed on the podcast, but the holocrons pointed out that Kenobi is the one who is going to help them destroy the Sith. And of course, we know that it's not Kenobi specifically. It's Kenobi's protecting the one who is the key to destroying the Sith, at least in the original trilogy.
Anyway.
Right. Yeah. So Ezra continues to try to convince Kenobi that they need him in their fight against the Empire. And Kenobi he's not going to go help Ezra, and points out Ezra makes the comment that the holocrons sent him to Kenobi, and Kenobi makes the point that the holocrons didn't, but it was Maul who did, and that Maul used Ezra's desire to do good to deceive him, and that Maul manipulated the truth to lead him to Tatooine where he never should have been in the first place.
Okay, so I wrote down this whole this whole exchange, and
perfect.
I have a question. Okay, So he says, Obi-Wan says, Maul used your desire to do good to deceive you, and in doing so, he has altered the course of many things.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean? Like what was supposed to happen that is now happening differently because of all this that you could possibly imagine? Because I was racking my brain. I was like, wow, what would that be?
That's a really good question, actually.
I think we need to go to the world between worlds, wander around a little bit, look through some mirrors. Yeah, that's a good question.
If I could ask Dave Filoni anything, that might be the question that I would ask.
That would be a good one. Well, because you could say it's, well, now we know that Obi-Wan's back in play, but the reason that Leia asks for Obi-Wan's help is because Bail Organa knew that he was still alive, so he had passed that information on to her. So it's not like this was it's not like her asking him was because Maul had finally found him or anything like that. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what would it have been.
And Ezra didn't go back and just broadcast that Kenobi was alive,
right?
So even Maul getting him to go to Tatooine and discover that Kenobi was alive, that really didn't have any major consequences in at least as far as we can tell in the movies or the storyline.
And the whole question of whether or not he would have had some kind of linking up with Luke or cooperation with Luke if he hadn't done the whole thing with taking Thrawn off to God knows where, mystery to be solved. Even so, it's like, well, how would any of that have played out differently? You know what I mean? Like if he hadn't, because he basically goes back home and kind of pretends this didn't happen,
right?
And kind of continues on. So yeah, I have no idea.
And even Ezra's sort of temptation in the dark side, his connection with Maul is never really, it doesn't really alter his life that drastically, because he never really fully gives into it. They sort of kind of tease it out, but it's resolved fairly quickly.
He just kind of gets like a little angsty, and it's not, I mean,
right,
it's nothing I don't see in the classroom every day. So
wow. Hey, that's the way it all started with Anakin, right?
That's true.
It all started with Anakin.
That's true.
So Anakin got angsty, and then he went south real fast.
Just when he was right on the edge, he thought about sand and how much he hated it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess now that I hear you guys talking, the only thing that comes to mind is that really Ezra came to Tatooine, therefore he was not at the base for a given period of time. So I wonder if something could have happened if Ezra was on the base, even though we don't really get any hint that something important may or may not have happened on base while he was gone. So
I wonder, could it have something to do with Maul?
Well, I was just
he wasn't supposed to cross, like he was maybe, I don't know, like redeemed or later on. So I don't know. It makes you wonder.
That could very well be, because
would he and Kenobi have met up differently? I don't know.
Yeah, you see Kenobi not wanting to fight him at first, and that's I mean, when we get into the duel, we'll talk about that. But that's not his initial inclination to fight him.
Right.
So perhaps Maul had a destiny beyond that encounter, but that encounter forced his death.
Because Kenobi's definitely not happy about the result of it.
Right.
He's not gloating. He's not, this is like this is a rematch 30 years in the making.
You sort of feel like Kenobi was sort of resigned to do that, especially as Maul was figuring out that he was protecting someone.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's the moment that it changes. The lightsaber's not even out on Kenobi's side until that, and then
his
it's
face he gets the furrowed brow, like, oh no, you don't.
Yeah.
Well, since you know that, now I gotta take you out.
Do you guys? Can I just for a sec, just to rewind back? I mean, it's connected to what I brought up earlier. Wanted to ask about their relationship, because like the opening scene. I just and it's funny because on I have it up here. It's great on Star Wars .fandom.com, and I love the image they use, and like the first thing under plot summary is the desolation of Maul which of course made me think of the Desolation of Smaug, but different. But what the note I wrote down, actually, here's another connection, was it's like the first note I wrote for this when I was rewatching it was Maul equals Captain Ahab. Like he's just Obi-Wan Kenobi is like Maul's like great white. Like he just has to like, I've got to find him. And it's
he even
just
brings
this
that up
absolute obsession.
in the fight. He brings it up. He says, "Oh, it's the apprentice." He calls him the apprentice. And it's like, whoa, hold on, you're still there? Like this is way down the line from that moment. But that's still that moment for you. So.
And it's like, this is where I mentioned I was going to mention Lord of the Rings, because it's just I've always loved, like, of everything I've ever read and watched, I just don't think anybody got the psychology of sin and temptation better than Tolkien with that ring. And with Gollum and the whole idea of like, so for me, I see this like as, all these different things that have happened to Maul, all these terrible things he's done. Like, so yeah, terrible things have been done to him, but he's still responsible for his choices, but somehow he's fixated on, like, he's put all of it onto Kenobi. Like Obi-Wan is like, so like he's poured all of this like attention and focus, and it's just this obsession on this, like, I gotta get this guy because he hurt me a long time ago. And it's like, dude, like you've hurt a lot more people. I mean, like you've done far worse things to many more people than what he did to you, even cutting you in half.
Right. Not to mention that's something that it almost freed Maul from the bond that he was in to the Sith Lord he was under.
Right.
And you look at what he made of himself from then, and you just watch. It's such a tragic figure that he's remade himself so many times. And has come out on top every time in a very big way, in a very galaxy defining way. And still his singular obsession is finding Obi-Wan to get revenge.
And that's what's so funny, is because even when Obi-Wan quote unquote wins, that's I forget who it was. I heard somebody point this out. I thought it was a really good point that, like, even as he's dying, like, okay, like, you're done, dude. Like it's here it is. Here's the end. Missions, plans, schemes. It's all done. What are you going to do? And like his dying words are about now, like, okay, well, this kid can get revenge for us.
Right.
So it's like, so he almost feels like reconciled to Obi-Wan. Like, okay, well done. Okay, you're a worthy opponent. We're connected. So this kid's going to get revenge for us. It's like, no, it's not. It's like, there's more than revenge, but he just can't get beyond that.
It's almost a personification of resentment or personification of unforgiveness. I mean, George Lucas, created Maul to look like Satan. I mean, that's pretty blatant, but so I mean, but
he's even said it. Like
has
one of the behind the scenes documentaries. I've seen him talk about that.
Yeah. So like, I mean, but you just see that play out, like his desire for revenge and that lack of forgiveness is on display in his person, but also in how he acts and his motivation and his kind of unhinged personality. At one point, when Maul and Kenobi are talking here too, I wrote it down because it was great. Was Kenobi says to Maul, "If you define yourself by your power to take life, to dominate, to possess, then you have nothing." I sort of felt that was a proverb almost.
Oh my gosh, guys, I'm going to connect it to Charles Dickens.
We need a fan to keep track of how many allusions we've made.
I didn't write this down. As Father's saying that, I thought I remember in Christmas Carol when there's that heartbreaking scene, with Scrooge and his, I guess it was his wife. I've never been too clear on that, but I gather that they were married, and now she's dowerless and all this kind of stuff. And she mentions to him that heartbreaking line about how he measures everything by gain. Yeah. So like the whole metric for life itself is gain. And it's like, that's just the wrong one, So for Maul, it doesn't matter who the master is, who the apprentice is, what the government is, the law. It's just everything is always his fundamental, sort of perspective is flawed.
Yeah. Since you brought that up, I did also wrote that line down, Father, and I kind of saw this as two masters. Like Maul being, I mean, he called himself Old Master in that arc that we just went over a few weeks ago. And then, Master Kenobi. And it's like the yin and the yang, or, what have you. It's the two opposites of what makes you a master, what Kenobi has mastered, versus what Maul has made himself the master of, and has, again, like, dominated and wanted to possess. And just like as a real world sort of application, it made me really think, that line that Obi-Wan says, how you define yourself. It's like nowadays we have this lack of role models, I think. Like in the Jedi Order, you had these masters who were like the people that you look up to. And nowadays we have such a lack of that. Like, how do you define yourself? I think a lot of people, especially younger people, but people of all ages, who am I? How do I define who I am? And nowadays, a lot of us are defining ourselves by what we have and who do we, one up in that, online debate or whatever. And the knowledge that we kind of possess that we can sort of, there's all different ways, that you can put your own spin on it. But I really just thought about that whole concept as applying to us today.
I couldn't help but think of scripture as well. St. Paul, 1 Corinthians 13, verse 2. And if I have the gift of prophecy and comprehend all mysteries and all knowledge, if I have all faith so as to move mountains, but I do not have love, I am nothing. So like, if you have all these things, if you have the power to take life, to dominate, and you want to define yourself by all the things that you accumulate or have, but you don't have love, then and perhaps Kenobi was referring to this when he said, then you have nothing. But the same thing is true. Without love, we have nothing.
And it plays out in their lightsaber duel too, because Maul is interested only in killing. That's his entire objective, is to get revenge and to kill. And Obi-Wan's only objective is to defend. It's out of love that he lights up his lightsaber, not even for himself at that point. He's not even trying to defend himself. It's not until Maul mentions Luke that he pulls the lightsaber out, and he's like, okay, well now we have to fight.
Well, and fun, just like Luke when Vader pushes the Leia button in Return of the Jedi, same thing. It's not revenge, it's disarming, well, literally in that case, disarming your opponent, and that's good. The just war theory, all of that stuff we've talked about too before. Like, how far do you have to go, when you are applying force and that kind of thing, I still, and Fonda, you mentioned that too. I really, it's so fast. I had to watch it, like, maybe Thomas has seen it because he's watched it. And Angela, how many, 20
as
or 30
a fencer too,
Well, yeah, I hadn't thought of it yet. So, but I finally saw him going for like the face smack, from episode 1, and that's the moment where he's like, nope, no, you don't, but yeah, it's so quick, quick.
I will point out just briefly that I did notice, and I assumed this would happen, but Maul was the one to attack. That Kenobi wasn't the one to make the first swing.
Well, and again, the contrast, and I just watched episode 1 last week, because I haven't seen it in a long time, and I love like Ewan McGregor's body language. Like, you can tell how much, and I love all the behind the scenes stuff. You guys have seen all of it too, I'm sure. But like, Ewan McGregor and Ray Parks prep for that, and they're just so into it, and but watching him, like, every time you watch it and it cuts back from the battle and he's standing behind that red ray shield and he's just like hopping, like he's just ready to go. And the moment that thing comes down, he's just right at him. And it's like such a contrast. And here you jump this character ahead, 30 plus years, and all that's happened to him since then. And here the two of them are again, and it's just so different. It's so cool to watch those two scenes back to back.
Well, and because in the initial one, it was Obi-Wan who was going for revenge.
Yeah,
that's he wasn't even defending himself at that point. He was just trying to get revenge for Qui-Gon going down. And so you've got a complete shift in them. And I thought this is a really from a fencer's perspective and from somebody who knows way too much about Star Wars, watching what happens with Obi-Wan here, the sword forms that he's using. So his typical sword form is holding the sword back and pointing kind of at his target. And that's indicative of him using form 4, which is the kind of acrobatic, more active stance, which would be the same form that Maul uses in the fighting.
Did he just real quick, Thomas? Did he do that? Was it with Grievous? I think the scene in episode 3, he really pronounced. Right. Okay. Yeah.
He does. Right. He does the sword back and fingers out. And so it's a very common one you'll see throughout the Clone Wars. You see him use that stance.
Okay.
And he stopped in this one. He stopped that.
Right.
And then he shifted. He shifted his weight, moved back, and then set the saber back upright behind him, in a kind of defensive stance. And that's form 3, which is the defensive stance. That's the design of form 3 is to be very defensive. And that is the same form that he uses against Vader on the Death Star.
Yes.
And so this is the moment where Obi-Wan switches. And
didn't Qui-Gon use that too? In episode 1, doesn't he kind of? I think he does. Like, okay, yeah. Cool.
Defense. Yeah. He does a defense stance. Yeah, because once he gets squared off by himself, he switches into that stance to be able to defend himself. Wow. And so it's watching this, like when you start to learn a little bit more about the stances and how they work and how the Jedi would use them, it really makes, like, this scene is a beautiful scene because you see that final moment of growth in Obi-Wan where he's not fighting to win, he's fighting to defend. And so what he does is he just shifts back into that defensive stance, and that's what kind of wins the day for him.
I think that all points to Obi-Wan's focus. He is very focused on his mission, and all of the dialogue that we see, as I was literally writing down all these lines and just circling things where Obi-Wan is talking about, like when he tells Ezra, that he's been deceived, that you have everything you need, but you seem to be letting it all go. And you're here where you never should have been. And just, he's almost coaching him about, you need to focus on what your mission is. What is your calling? What is your vocation? And because you can see in everything, and Obi-Wan just embodies this man on a mission. Like he knows exactly what to do and not do based upon, he makes those decisions based upon that mission. And so that's one of the things that really caught me. And just, everything that we've been talking about with temptation, Mike, that you were saying, where it reminds us too, like we have those distractions, with our own vocation, with our own calling, that can draw us off of that path. And to me, it was just so inspiring to see Obi-Wan. I mean, again, he's my favorite character in Star Wars, but to see him again here in that light and to really be like, yeah, I want to be like that. I want to have that sense of purpose and intention, because you can tell that he's so at peace with himself and his just his life, his place in the universe in the Force. And so that was one thing that I wanted to point out. And then another thing, since we've kind of gotten deep into the encounter with these two, is at the very beginning when Maul and Obi-Wan first kind of encounter each other, Maul says, "Look what's become of you, a rat in the desert," and Obi-Wan says, "Look what I have risen above." And in addition to that being, for me, something that again points to him being focused on his place and everything, it also reminded me of how, going back to the classical motifs and Maul being like this demon, and we're in the desert, and Obi-Wan is like this Christ figure, that you really see Maul as sort of like the accuser. Like that's one of the names for Satan, right? And so he's like, "Look what's become of you. You're just a rat out here." And instead Obi-Wan says, "Look what I have risen above." It's almost like, how we can kind of allow ourselves to get caught up in those patterns of thought, like when we are trapped in, oh, like getting down on ourselves and look what I did wrong and look at what I'm stuck in. But, you know, Obi-Wan is sort of that model of like how God sees us, you know, like look at what I've risen above. And again, for me, that was sort of like, man, I want to be like Obi-Wan, you know, to be able to say that about myself in those pivotal moments of your life, you know, where you're at this place of conflict or you have to make a decision, whatever it is. So anyway, those were kind of like my deeper theme notes since we're throwing all those out.
Well, if I may, just before I forget real quick, Angela, because that I'm reminded of, you know, that is the Mark Twain quote, you know, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, you know, something like that. Because I didn't think of this till just now, but isn't that a lot like that scene in The Force Awakens, right? When Kylo Ren says to Lord Santeca, look how old you've become. And he's like, something far worse has happened to you.
Yeah.
You know, there's like a little bit of the same, you know, a little bit of that idea of, you know, oh, you're old, or you're, you know, just this, you're just that. It's this reductionist, diminishing, accusing kind of like it's the same voice, you know, when the reality is, no, there's something what you're into is a lot worse. You know? Yeah.
Well, and then if you go back and look at why Maul is not able to find him on the planet, and you realize Obi-Wan knows he's there. So what Obi-Wan's been doing is avoiding him.
Right.
So Obi-Wan knew the moment he came onto the planet, he knew Maul was there, and he knew he could have gone and confronted him, but he kept avoiding him until it was impossible to anymore with this moment with Ezra. And so I think, you know, to go back to your question about, you know, what changed, really, that's probably what changed is now he has to come into confrontation with Maul, and that's going to end Maul's arc prematurely to what Obi-Wan was hoping for.
I wonder, even if Maul would have like died in the desert, you know, it also reminds me a little of, you know, that conversation Ahsoka, this was of course later than after this episode, but when Ahsoka and Rex, you know, have that conversation and he's talking about how like all those guys want to kill you, and she's, you know, basically saying like, they're not going to die by my hand. Like that just like, yes, that might happen, but I don't want to be the one that does it. I wonder if even something as simple as that, like Obi-Wan's like, he's going to die in the desert, he's going to leave, whatever, but I don't want that memory. I don't want that act, you know, even if it's defense, you know.
I want to go back to Angela, your points earlier, because I think that those were incredibly insightful with the whole notion of vocation. And so, you know, I just, it makes me even more excited to see the Kenobi series now, because we get to see that growth from where he ended after episode 3 and how he gets to become so peaceful and, you know, engaged in his mission. But what I was thinking about as you were talking was, you know, he is incredibly peaceful being in his mission, in his vocation. Versus someone like Ezra, or perhaps, you know, any number of us, you know, when we sort of have the grand ideas that I want to change the world, or, you know, I want to do amazing things. And those desires are very good. And, you know, Ezra wants to do that too, but there's more grace in living out the vocation, no matter how small it is, and living that well. So like Obi-Wan is completely peaceful living out his vocation to protect Luke, even though the rebellions happen around him, even though everybody is wondering, well, if, you know, he's probably on some backwater world, why isn't he joining the rebellion? He's incredibly peaceful doing what he is called to do. And he's not worried about, you know, things that he can't really be a part of. You know, so that's a reminder to all of us that having the desire to change the world in great and amazing ways is a very, very good desire. But what's more important is to find out the vocation and the call that we have individually and to live that out well. And often that isn't quite as grandiose as we might think.
Right.
You know, being a good dad, being a good mom, is an amazing vocation that has tremendous impact. You know, and for some it's different, of course, being a priest or, you know, or just doing our work well, you know, whatever it is, loving well.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I work for a ministry full time. And a lot of times people ask us like, well, how can I fix my family? Like, how can I get them to be at peace or loving each other or forgiving each other or whatever? And it's like, just do that in your family. Like, start there. Like, start with you. You know, it's that whole old adage that Michael Jackson used, you know, the man in the mirror type of thing.
Yeah.
But
be the change you wish to see.
Yes, be the change you wish to see. And that truly does make a huge difference. Because if you think about all the things that really, really impacted why you make the decisions that you make and why you are as loving as you are, or why you are as fill in the blank, you know, good, positive thing, is probably because you learned how to love from somebody else, and probably because you were forgiven by somebody else, or whatever that is. So that is just so undervalued, because it is more, I guess, fancy and glittery and glitzy and you're, you know, to be the popular sort of like, you know, famous, you know, whatever it is, have the cool job and have the whatever, you know, but ultimately that's not the important thing.
Well, we can't change other people. We can only change ourselves. I was reminded of the quote, where there is no love, put love, and you will find love. You know, so if you want to change the world, I mean, it starts with looking inward and changing our hearts, for sure. I appreciate Kenobi's example.
And then in 3 seconds, the duel's over. Like,
right.
Just boom.
Yeah.
And that's, I think it'd be funny to beautiful thing about this episode. You know, that's the beautiful thing about this episode is like all of this is all discussion that we have just from the subtle lead up to the duel. And you're like, you get to the duel and you're like, yeah, there's going to be this fight. And then that's it.
If I get quarantined again, I'm going to do some music editing over it and just like kick off the Duel of the Fates and then just abruptly cut it, because it's, you know, like dun, 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 oh, okay, it's all right. Just runs out. Like, guys, we got 20 minutes of this song.
But I did it helped me at least understand it better when Dave Filoni talked about those who are skilled at fighting, fights don't last long.
Oh yeah.
So this, you know, as short as it was, it contains in those 5 seconds just a story of growth of Maul and Kenobi, or growth in Kenobi and change in Maul, as we pointed out earlier.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the point of fighting is to stop the fight.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's the point.
I thought it was to run around and hit swords together. Right.
I mean,
I love like when you look really close at someone.
You try it. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So once you learn how to fight, you realize that, and what you see there is they stare at each other for a long time. And I can tell you from experience, standing on one end of a fencing line, looking at someone else, you play the whole fight out, and then you do exactly what you think is going to work. They do exactly what they think is going to work, and one of the two things is the right thing, and that's it, and that's pretty much how it goes. And you see these two squaring off with each other, and Maul's sitting there thinking, I bet I can do exactly the same thing to him that I did to his master. And Obi-Wan's sitting there thinking, I bet he's going to try and do the same thing that he did to Qui-Gon. And they were both, they both tried their thing, and Obi-Wan came out on top.
Well, and even, that it's painful every time I watch it, but the whole, like, don't try it, Anakin,
yeah.
And you just, it's like, don't, and okay. Like, exactly what I did, except this is what Maul should have done, because that, of course, is like the pivotal move in that fight,
I have to point out that, yes, the point of fighting is to stop the fight, but in terms of Star Wars, also the point of fighting is to watch the awesome choreographed sword or the lightsaber battles.
I love when you can see on their faces so clear, like, because we've seen these so many times, so you can see so clearly, like, that it's so rehearsed, some of them more than others. And like you see them kind of going for like the spot they've rehearsed 1,000 times, and it's just fun.
I remember watching, I want to say it was like behind the scenes from episode 2, and seeing Ewan McGregor with those metal sticks that they would use, but how bent those sticks get after their practice sessions.
Yeah,
the guy like goes off to the side, like sticks it in, and like bends it back. Yeah,
it's
oh my gosh,
incredible the amount of training that they have to go through for that, just to choreograph the one lightsaber battle scene.
I'm not saying there's so many things I'm like, Quick side note: the Star Trek reference. I was go ahead.
As far as lightsabers, fights go, the best fights in Star Wars are the ones that tell a story with the fight. So, the iconic fight of Vader versus Luke in Empire, when Vader's just every stroke is just powerful and driving, and Luke's is just quick and dodging and trying to stay alive because he has no idea what he's doing. That it tells the story of this character that is in their full strength, fighting against this character that is still not trying to figure out where they fit into everything. And that's where, and this is one of those fights where you see the two characters play to their strength as a character outside of lightsaber fighting, inside of that fight in a microcosm, and you get that 30 years worth of struggle between the two of them. You finally get that climactic conclusion, and it was foregone. It was already done. Like it already happened long ago, long before they got to that point where they lit up the lightsabers. That battle was already finished.
I want to hear your Star Trek reference.
Yeah. Well, to me, it's the very beginning. Has anybody seen? I haven't yet, but if someone hasn't done this yet, someone should. Like a side-by-side mashup with. Because here's your moment. I feel like with Maul screaming Kenobi at the top of his lungs and Kirk screaming Khan. Just get them right now. Because I thought of it. I just started I was like sipping something and I almost spit it out. Like, 'cause I don't know why that popped in there. Like, Kenobi. I was like, God. I was just like, there. That'd be great. That's where the series come together. That moment. That's like the picture of Lucas and Gene Roddenberry shaking hands. Like 1987 or something. Like that's the moment.
Anything else that you guys want to add between that relationship? There's really not much of the episode left, so I mean,
yeah.
No, my final note was, how did Chopper survive a ride across the desert on a dewback without falling off? That was my last question.
He has those repulsor lift things.
Well, they said he's like the family cat, right? Like R2's the dog and Chopper's the cat, so it's like
find a comfortable spot up there.
I looked for a seatbelt and I didn't find one, so that's why I asked.
He doesn't seem like a seatbelt wearer.
No, that's for sure.
So the episode does end with them getting back to Chopper Base in Maul's ship, which was a cool thing there. And Ezra apologizes to the family for running away and tells Hera and Kanan that this is where he's supposed to be, which has a whole new connotation now after having that whole discussion on vocation. Mm-hmm. Maybe he picked up that his vocation is to be there with Hera and Kanan and the rest of the crew and not worry about what else is happening where he can't really do anything anyway. He says that they're his family and that they should go home. And so they're preparing for the attack on Lothal. And then the very end has a cool nod to A New Hope. Kenobi rides close enough to hear Aunt Beru calling for Luke, and we see Luke kind of running across the horizon in response to her call. And the Force theme, or Binary Sunset, as the actual kind of the track on the soundtrack is played. Mm-hmm. Cool lead up into A New Hope.
I think too it did officially say, I just checked that this episode is supposed to be 2 years before the Battle of Yavin. So Luke's 17, so we're close, but not quite there.
He's got his micro machine chips that he's playing with right now.
And I think, he and Ezra, I guess they're probably about the same age, right? Because wasn't Ezra born on Empire Day?
He was.
I think they say at one point, and that's, I think, more or less when Luke and Leia are born, or close to it. So I guess they're right about the same.
any other final random movie connections, TV other connections?
I really want somebody to count all of
Dostoevsky. No, it's
Oh gosh, don't bring in the Russians. My daughter complained, like, he got cut in half and fell down a hole, and this is what kills him. that was the big complaint about the fight from her.
You know, you don't even really see the wound, I don't think, you know. So.
Yeah.
Someone was pointing out that they wondered if that was because this is an animated show, and you know, so it's kid friendly. Because I had to rewatch it multiple times, and I couldn't really see a wound, but it's heavily implied. Okay, well, I think that is it from all of us. I think.
I'm sorry, I was just like, it's heavily implied. It's like, yeah, he died. It's heavily implied that he got a wound. Yeah,
it's true.
I would say that.
It's going to turn into the Monty Python thing.
It's only a flesh wound.
The Black Knight, you know, with the black back here.
That would be a great cosplay. If somebody did like a Black Knight and Maul crossover.
Yeah.
It's merely a flesh wound. Come back here, I'll bite your legs off.
You have somebody like with a wheelbarrow, and like you just dress it so you just see from your torso up, and you're just along. Father's just going, please don't do that.
I really wouldn't be surprised if people have done that though. Like,
I'm gonna look it up as soon as we're done.
There are some pretty ingenious cosplays out there.
Oh my goodness.
Total side note, but there's there's someone in an electronic wheelchair that built a Dalek casing around themselves and
really?
Went around. Yeah. So people are incredibly creative. I am not that creative. Okay, before any other tangents, I think that's where we need to close this episode for this evening. So, listeners, what did you think of this episode of Star Wars Rebels and the encounter with Maul and Kenobi? And definitely let us know by emailing us or commenting on our Facebook or on our Twitter page, and let us know. And you can email us at starwars@sqpn.com, and you can find StarQuest on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, and on Twitter at SQPN. And we would like to take a moment now to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Star Wars, including Nathan C., Hugh P., Scott M., Rob P., and Julie L. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Star Wars and all the shows that we make here at StarQuest. And please, if you feel like you would like to join them, you can do so by visiting sqpn.com/give. And of course, be sure to subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast player, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or you can follow us on the SQPN YouTube channel. Just be sure to click the bell to receive notifications. And you can find any of our previous episodes at sqpn.com/Star Wars. And we will be back in 2 weeks when we will continue in Star Wars Rebels by reviewing Season 4, Episode 13, A World Between Worlds. That one should be a really fun one to do, so stay tuned for that. Until next time, Angela Ciolana, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Wars.
My pleasure. Thanks, y'all.
Thomas Sanjurjo, thanks for joining us this evening.
It was nice to be back.
And Mike Creevy, thanks for joining us tonight as well.
Can't wait till next time.
And once again, I'm Father Andrew Kinstetter. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.